I signed up for trunk or treat because it always felt like the safest way to celebrate Halloween. Cars instead of houses, parents instead of strangers, the whole school parking lot glowing under those harsh floodlights. I teach second grade, so most of my kids were still at the age where a superhero cape could make them sprint in circles. That October evening was perfect. Breezy, orange lights strung across minivans, the smell of kettle corn. Parents parked side by side, opening decorated trunks for the kids. I checked my volunteer list, clipped on my badge, and tried to remember which parent had peanut-free candy. Everything about the night screamed safe, familiar, normal. The first time I noticed the man, he was just another adult hovering near the ring toss game. Tan jacket, baseball cap, no costume, no name tag. Not unusual, but he didn't talk to any adults. He just stood near the kids, smiling the way you do when you're trying to look friendly without joining in. I figured he was a shy dad, maybe divorced, not sure how to mingle. But I kept seeing him, near the craft table, then by the cupcake station, then again, lingering by the hay bale photo booth, always close enough to hear conversations, but never close enough to participate. I watched him gently steer a child away from the candy line, saying, "Your dad's right over here." It didn't sound wrong until I saw the little girl's face, hesitant, uncertain. I recognized her from the class next to mine. "Hey, sweetheart," I called, walking over. "Where's your mom?" She pointed toward the stage where her mom was handing out cider. The man stepped slightly sideways, putting himself between us, smiling like we were all part of the same conversation. "Thanks for helping," I said, tone light but firm. "We've got it from here." He nodded politely and drifted away. For a few minutes, I convinced myself it was nothing. People get confused, kids wander, but every few minutes I'd spot his jacket again, always at the edge of another small group of children. I keyed my walkie. "Andrea to Station 1. Can you keep an eye on a man in a tan jacket? No name tag. Ball cap." "Copy," our office manager said. "Want me to come over?" "Not yet," I said. "Just keep an eye." He had a pattern. He listened for names, repeated them casually. "Evan, right? Or you dropped this, buddy." He used overheard details like keys, small pieces of familiarity to unlock trust. I could feel my stomach tighten with that cold, certain realization that this wasn't just awkward behavior. This was practiced. I shadowed him for 10 minutes. He never approached another adult. Every time I got closer, he shifted toward the far row of the parking lot, the darkest part. That's when I saw him gesture again, this time toward 2 boys. I stepped in fast. "Hey, boys, stay where I can see you." Then to the man, "Do you need help finding someone?" He gave me a pleasant, puzzled look. "They're mine," he said. "Which class?" I asked. "Room 4. We don't number classrooms. We use teacher names." I kept my voice even. "Right. Well, let's make sure they get checked out through the front." He smiled like he didn't hear me and kept walking. "Copy," I said into the walkie. "We're doing wristband checks now. Quietly, please." Within seconds, our principal was calling the school resource officer. I motioned to another teacher to move wide, circling him from the other side of the lot. The crowd noise swallowed the tension, but my focus narrowed. His route, his pacing, the way he slid toward the shadowed overflow. "Sir," I said, stepping up beside him, "we'll need you to stay where there's light." He stopped, turned his head just enough that I could see his eyes under the brim. Flat, unbothered. "They're mine," he repeated. "Then they can come over here and tell us that." He didn't. He pivoted, started walking again, right toward the dark gap between 2 SUVs. That's when I heard the siren, just close enough for the red-blue wash to flash over the chrome bumpers. 2 officers walked in, calm and professional. One of them, Officer Salazar, volunteered at our reading program. She greeted him like she would any nervous parent. "Evening, sir. You with us tonight?" "Just picking up my boys," he said. "Great," she smiled. "Which family?" They're around. Let's find them together. He hesitated, then tried to sidestep through the SUV gap. A nearby dad, bless him, stepped forward, blocking the path. The second officer mirrored him, patient but firm. The man stopped. His face didn't change. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. Kids kept laughing. Parents kept chatting. The music looped the same 3 Halloween songs. The chaos of normal life continued while, just 20 feet away, a man quietly gave up the act. Salazar spoke gently. "Can you point out your kids for me?" He looked toward the crowd, clearly realizing there was no easy answer. "They're around," he repeated. "Okay," she said. "Let's talk over here." They moved to the edge of the lot. He handed over an ID from a county miles away. I heard fragments. Prior contact. No custody record. Verify statements. Meanwhile, I walked the lot, checking with parents. None recognized him. None of the kids he'd spoken to were his. The event shut down early. Parents left with their kids, holding them closer. When the last car pulled out, the lot felt enormous and empty. Later, the principal told us police didn't arrest him that night. Just questioned, documented, released. Prior contact in another district, the officer said. And that phrase sat in my head like a stone. It didn't mean safe. It meant almost. We changed everything after that. Wristbands in matching pairs for every parent and child, checklists with names, times, and car descriptions. 2 volunteers at the exit, 1 by the overflow lot, no exceptions. It's strange, the details that burn into memory. Not the police lights, not the shouting. The jacket cuff, shiny with wear, brushing past kids who trusted too easily. The way he hovered just outside contact, hands open, pretending to help. Last year, we added a light tower to flood the overflow row. It ruins the photos a little, but I don't care. I'll take a bad picture over a missing kid any night. When parents grumble about extra wristbands or new sign-out steps, I smile and tell them it's about safety. I don't say the rest, that we built the rules from a night when I saw exactly how thin safety can be. Halloween's supposed to be about pretending. Monsters, masks, harmless scares. That night reminded me that real danger doesn't wear costumes. It wears a dad's smile and waits for people to stop paying attention. Every year, when the music starts and kids scatter in their costumes, I check the gate myself. I test the lock, make sure the volunteers know their zones, that the radios work. And when I hear a voice in the crowd say, "Right over here," I still look up, every single time. Because you never really forget the sound of danger hiding inside something ordinary. Halloween doesn't just feel different for kids, it's different on shift too. Paramedics know. Early calls were costume rashes, candy overloads, maybe a scraped knee. Later came the drunk drivers and house parties. By the time the radio crackled that night, it was routine. Possible allergic reaction, pediatric mild distress. Rain had turned to mist, giving the streetlights that soft halo. I sat passenger, gloves ready, watching the blur of porch lights and plastic pumpkins flash by as my partner Richie drove. We pulled up to a blue 2-story house with fake cobwebs on the porch. A mom met us at the door clutching a phone and said, "He's throwing up," said his tongue felt funny. 9-year-old boy on the couch, Spider-Man pajamas under a robe, pale but alert. Beside him sat a plastic bowl of vomit and a small clear zip bag labeled in Sharpie. "Happy Halloween, be safe," with a smiley face drawn next to it. Inside were 2 gummies dusted with a powder that looked like crushed sugar, but wasn't even. It clumped in the creases. "Where'd you get these?" I asked. 3 doors down, Mom said. They had little baggies for each kid. It looked thoughtful. His vitals were off, pulse slower than it should be. Not an allergy, something else. We started fluids and loaded him for transport. I sealed the candy bag in a specimen pouch, labeling it with the address. By the time we handed him off at Albany General, his heart rate had steadied. The doctor promised to test the candy. I'd seen enough sugar highs for one night, but something about that smiley label stuck in my mind. We barely made it out of the bay before dispatch sent another call. Same complaint, 2 blocks away. We rolled up on a beige house with an inflatable ghost deflating in the drizzle. A girl, maybe 11, sat on the kitchen floor, pale, eyes glassy. Her dad beside her, helpless. She got dizzy, he said, then sick. No rash, no trouble breathing. Same bag, same Sharpie handwriting, same heart over the I. My whole core went tight. The H had the same little swoop, the same neat pressure. I'd seen that handwriting before, on a chalkboard sign at the end of my street. Please don't block driveway. Thanks. With the same heart over the I. My street. Richie met my eyes. You thinking what I'm thinking? I'm thinking coincidence, I said, even though I didn't believe it. We stabilized the girl and called for PD backup. The hospital called 10 minutes later. Trace amounts of sedative in the first sample. Like a switch flipping, my heart began to race. Guess who lives 3 houses down from me? I said. Richie looked up from the chart. No way. The next call confirmed it. Officers on my street requesting EMS standby for candy tampering investigation. We turned the corner, siren off. My neighbor stood on his porch in a bathrobe and slippers, coffee mug in hand, looking like someone about to water the plants. 2 officers were questioning him. Another held a zip bag inside an evidence pouch. When she saw me, she mouthed, "Same thing?" He smiled at me like it was any other night. "Hey man, big night for you guys, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "I was trying to help," he said to the officer. "Kids eat too much sugar, makes them sick. I figured give them something that calms them down." "Did you make these yourself?" "Just gummies," he said, cheerful. "A little crushed sleeping aid, nothing dangerous. Keeps them from puking in the street." Richie whispered under his breath, "Jesus." The officer held out a bag from the porch, dozens of identical zip packs. She opened one and a faint chemical smell drifted out. At the bottom, powder clung to the edges like frost. Another bag contained a fragment of a scored white pill. Sedative, generic imprint visible. He licked sugar from his fingertip before anyone could stop him. "See? Perfectly fine." "Sir, don't touch that," the officer said, but he just shrugged. When she asked to see the rest, he came back with a grocery sack full of them. At the bottom, more tablet fragments. She sealed it without another word. "My wife thought it was cute," he said, nodding toward the dark doorway. "We made the labels together." PD cuffed him, no shouting, no resistance. He even joked, "You're overreacting." We stayed for standby protocol, though there wasn't much for us to do. "That the guy who lent you a ladder last spring?" Richie asked. "Yeah." He seemed normal. "Yeah." 3 more calls came in over the next hour. Parents bringing in leftover bags once they saw the lights on our block. One grandma even microwaved a gummy to kill germs before realizing it smelled like pills. The hospital confirmed mild sedative dosage, not lethal but definitely harmful for kids. No headline came out of it, just a short police blotter entry. The neighbor's porch went dark for a week. His wife kept going to work like nothing had happened. The boy from the first call went home the next morning. The girl too. Lucky kids. For a while, I couldn't stop picturing that Sharpie note. How many parents saw it and thought, someone cares? A few nights later, I walked by his house. The chalkboard still sat at the bottom of the stairs. "Please don't block driveway. Thanks." With that same neat heart over the I. The porch light stayed off after that, like guilt or maybe embarrassment. But part of me thought he didn't feel either, just irritation at being caught. Richie called it reckless kindness, but that felt too forgiving. He didn't mean harm, maybe, but he also didn't mean good. He meant control. You'd think I'd seen enough to be numb. But there's something different when danger wears a neighbor's smile, when it looks thoughtful. The next Halloween, I didn't even buy candy. My sister hosted, and I brought sealed store-bought mini bars still in their plastic. I dumped them in the bowl without touching them, feeling ridiculous. When kids came to the door, she teased me, "You look like you're expecting a background check." "Maybe I am," I said. That night, when we drove home, I saw other streets with those handwritten notes taped to bags, parents still trusting their neighbors. I wanted to yell at them to stop, but you can't live that way. People have to trust something. 2 weeks later, I saw him again. Middle of the day, grocery bags in hand. He smiled, nodded like nothing had happened. No ankle monitor, no guilt. Just the same robe and coffee mug energy in daylight. I nodded back because I didn't know what else to do. "What do you say to someone who poisoned your neighborhood with a smiley face?" He said, "Hey, you working tonight?" "Yeah." "Stay safe out there," he said. I wanted to say, "I'm trying to keep everyone safe from people like you," but I just walked past. We train to look for signs of shock, for trauma. No one trains you to spot the quiet ones, the helpful adults, the safe smiles, the notes that say be safe and mean something else entirely. The job teaches you how thin safety is. It's a film stretched over normal life. One careless, thoughtful act can tear it. I tell new EMTs to look for the details that don't fit. That's where danger hides. Every Halloween now, I tell the same thing to the kids at safety talks. If it's homemade, if it's repackaged, if it has a note that says, "Be safe," don't touch it. Because the scariest thing I've ever seen wasn't a ghost or monster or screaming. It was handwriting I recognized from 3 doors down, smiling back from a candy bag that looked like kindness. I was 17 and babysitting for one of my mom's friends. A professor, 2 kids, in a quiet street in Madison. They were the kind of family that left instructions on the counter and snacks in the fridge. It was Halloween night, so I came early, watched the kids collect their candy, brushed their teeth, read them a story, and tucked them in by 9. By 9:30, the house was silent. The dishwasher hummed, the old yellow lab slept by the couch, and the porch pumpkins flickered through the blinds. I sat in the living room scrolling my phone, one lamp on, bowl of candy by the door. Then came 3 knocks. Not a child's knock, 3 slow, spaced taps. I thought maybe another parent or someone lost. I stood, stepped carefully over the lab, and looked through the peephole. A skeleton stared back. Plain white skull mask, hoodie pulled up, gloves on. For a second, I thought maybe it was a joke until the voice came through the wood. "Hey, I'm a friend from work. Forgot my phone inside." "They're not home," I said. He paused, then, almost friendly. "She said it was on the table. I'll just grab it." The professor hadn't mentioned visitors. "You'll have to come back later," I said. He didn't argue, just silence. Then footsteps, fading off the porch. I waited a long time before moving, staring through the peephole. The lab didn't stir. I texted the mom just in case. "Hi, anyone supposed to stop by? A man just knocked, said he's a friend from work." No answer. 10 minutes passed. 3 more knocks. "I left my keys," he said. "She told me to stop back." I felt a jolt in my stomach. "You have the wrong house." I looked through the peephole again. Just the edge of a shoulder. He was standing out of view, too close to catch him fully. I held up my phone, snapped a photo through the peephole just to make noise. The second I did, he stepped sideways, out of frame. My phone buzzed. "Absolutely not. Don't open the door. We're calling police. Stay upstairs." Then, another message. "They're on their way." I turned off the lamp and backed toward the stairs. My legs shook, but I kept it together. Halfway up, I heard him again. "Hey, she said I could grab it. I'm her brother." I didn't respond. The lab still didn't move. Then came the doorknob. Not enough to turn, but enough to tell me he'd tried. I reached the top step and checked on the kids, both asleep, breathing slow. I turned the nightlight up a notch and sat by their door, clutching my phone. A faint scraping came from the side of the house, like a hand dragging over siding. Then the back doorknob jiggled. He was circling, trying every entry. "Police are 2 minutes away," the mom texted. I slid every deadbolt guard the professor had installed, one by one. Each metallic click felt like an anchor. Then the alarm chirped once. A door sensor triggered. "Side door." I froze. My heartbeat was pushing through my throat. The voice came again, almost conversational. "Just a second," he said. I knew he wasn't supposed to be there, but the calmness of it made my skin crawl. He said it like he belonged. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Then flashing lights spilled through the curtains. Blue and red. A loud knock followed. "Police!" I heard quick movement below. When the officers called again, I managed to shout back. When I opened the door, they told me to stay upstairs until they cleared the house. I watched from the kids' window as beams of light swept across the yard. They didn't find him, just shoe scuffs by the basement window well. One clean fingerprint on the outside of the glass. When the professor and his wife arrived minutes later, they looked absurdly out of place in their costumes. Cape, witch hat, glitter still on their cheeks. The relief on their faces almost made me cry. The police took my statement. They asked what he said, what he wore, if he showed a weapon. I told them everything. They said they'd canvass the area and check other doorbell cameras. Nothing came of it. One camera caught him for half a second, just a shoulder, a glimpse of the skull mask. For the rest of the night, I stayed on the couch while the parents talked to the officers outside. I thought about how calmly he'd spoken, how casually he'd lied, and how he never once tried to force the door. He just waited, testing edges. Later, the professor apologized, like he'd invited it to happen. I told him he didn't need to, but I understood. When something like that happens in your house, it stains the routine. I babysat for them again eventually. All lights on, doors double locked. If someone knocked, I called before even answering. Sometimes, though, I still think about that voice. Calm, polite, harmless, until it wasn't. My boyfriend asked why I didn't shout or run. The truth is, that's not how it works. When you're responsible for 2 sleeping kids, fear takes a back seat to logic. You don't panic, you calculate. Which doors are locked, where the exits are, how to keep quiet so they don't wake up scared. The police said it might have been someone trying random houses looking for an easy one. But I don't believe that. He came back 3 times, always with a new story, always calm. He knew the neighborhood. He didn't want candy. He wasn't loud, wasn't violent. He didn't need to be. He made me question what safe really meant. I kept babysitting after that, but part of me never came down those stairs again. Fear doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it knocks politely and waits for you to be polite back. Don't be. I wasn't planning on standing out that Halloween. I just wanted something cheap and fast. It was late October 2022 in Columbus. My friends were already planning the big bar crawl, and I had nothing to wear. So I stopped at a thrift store that smelled like dryer sheets and dust, rummaged through a clearance bin, and found a rubber half mask with a crooked smirk. $5. Perfect. The cashier laughed when I dropped it on the counter. Creepy little thing, huh? $5 creepy's all I can afford, I said. It smelled faintly of peppermint and glue, probably from whoever tried to fix it. I wiped it off with an alcohol pad, threw on a flannel, and called it a costume. The bars on High Street were packed that night. Music shaking the walls, spilled drinks underfoot. I pulled the mask down just long enough for my friends to laugh and take photos. I was mid-selfie when someone tapped my shoulder. A guy I didn't know stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. Where'd you get that mask? The thrift shop on Hudson, I said, smiling. He leaned closer. No, that exact one. See that gouge by the cheek? I touched the nick on the rubber. Yeah? So? He held up his phone and showed me a still frame from bar security footage. Someone wearing my mask bumping into him last weekend. That guy stole my phone. For a second, I laughed it off. Guess we're mask twins? He didn't laugh. Take it off. People nearby went quiet. I lifted the mask off my face. Man, I just bought it tonight. The bartender was watching now. He grabbed my phone, walked off, and never looked back. That's the same mask. The bouncer came over. Everything okay? He's wearing the thief's mask, the stranger said. The bouncer looked at me. You steal a phone? No, I blurted. I can prove it. I've got the receipt. I pulled the crumpled paper from my pocket. Resurrection thrift, $5. The bouncer nodded but didn't back off. Step outside. Out on the sidewalk, the stranger's friends had joined him. 2 men in jackets, tense but quiet. The bouncer called campus police. Within minutes, a cruiser rolled up. The officer listened to the short version. The stranger had a police report number ready. He'd been waiting for this chance all week. Mind if I take a quick photo of the mask? The officer asked me. Go ahead, I said. He snapped it under the cruiser light, that smug plastic grin reflecting back at me. You said you bought it tonight? Yep, from a donation bin. Did the store say who donated it? No idea. He looked thoughtful. Probably nothing, but I'd avoid wearing it until we're sure. Could be tied to more than one incident. He handed it back. You're not in trouble, kid. Bad luck's all. Bad luck or not, I shoved the mask into my pocket. My friends found me and tried to lighten the mood, but I couldn't shake the thought someone had used this same thing to ruin someone else's week. The next morning, the officer emailed me. He wanted to meet at the thrift store when it opened. The clerk, a young guy with bleached hair, recognized the mask immediately. Yeah, I almost tossed it. The strap was glued back on. Some guy dumped a few bags last week and sprinted out before I could even say thanks. Any cameras outside? The officer asked. Just inside, the clerk said. Bins in the alley. He wrote down the donation date, shook his head, and muttered, People are weird, man. A day later, the officer called again. That mask lines up with a few pickpocket cases from last weekend. So the thief's still out there? Probably, he said. Could be a group. Costumes make it easy. They switch masks and vanish. He asked to hold on to mine for testing. Fingerprints, adhesive samples, whatever they could pull. You'll get it back if it comes up clean. I don't want it back, I said. He chuckled. Can't blame you. That night, walking home, I passed the thrift store again. The donation bin sat in shadow, half open like a mouth. For a second, I pictured someone dropping off the mask in a hurry, hands shaking, heart pounding, hoping it would disappear into someone else's life. A week later, the officer updated me. The glue matches a craft brand, too common to trace. But yeah, same style mask shows up in other reports. No arrests yet. He paused. You ever see someone swap costumes mid-party? Yeah, I said. Why? They'd hit a few bars, change masks after each score. Makes ID impossible. So that was it. My $5 impulse buy had been part of someone else's camouflage. People on campus loved the story once word spread. The guy whose costume was evidence. Everyone laughed. I tried to too, but every time I pictured that stranger's face, white, tense, furious, it hit differently. He didn't see me. He saw the person who'd made his life harder. And honestly, who could blame him? For weeks, I avoided anything with a mask. No parties, no costumes, not even winter scarves pulled too high. It's strange how something harmless can carry so much weight once you know its history. A month later, the police emailed again. No match on the mask. We're closing the case unless new reports come in. You're clear. I stared at the message. Clear. Like I'd been dirty before. I never picked the mask up. I pictured it sitting in an evidence box under buzzing fluorescent lights, just another object waiting for someone else to claim it. But every Halloween since, I still think about it. Because sometimes, you don't need a ghost or a curse to feel haunted. Sometimes it's enough to realize how easily you can wear someone else's story, literally over your face, and not even know it. People romanticize Halloween like it's a harmless night to pretend. But that mask taught me something different. Pretending blurs lines. It lets people test how invisible they can be. Maybe that's what scares me most now, not the jump scares or the horror movies. The idea that someone can hand off their guilt to a stranger with a $5 thrift store drop. And that I almost wore it home smiling. I worked at one of those big haunted attractions outside Kansas City. The kind that takes over an empty warehouse every fall and turns it into a maze of plywood walls, fog, and screams. My job was the chainsaw gag. It's the finale scare. The moment when guests think they've made it out, then I roar out of the shadows. The saw was real, but the chain wasn't. We removed it every night, tagged it with a bright green prop marker, and checked the throttle twice. It made all the right noise without the danger. The job was easy. The floor lead gave the cue over radio. I revved the saw, stepped into the strobe light, and chased them through the last door. Half the time, someone dropped a shoe. People screamed, laughed, and stumbled out the exit, promising to come back next year. Behind the scenes, it was less glamorous. Half theater, half construction zone. A couple of plug-in heaters, a makeup mirror, and the smell of sweat, rubber, and fog juice. Before every shift, we had a safety meeting. Tag checks, first aid location, fire exit reminders. We knew the risks. Scaring people safely takes planning. That October night started like any other. We opened at 7 sharp. The early groups were families and teenagers. Lots of nervous laughter. I'd been doing the job long enough to time my rev to their screams. Around 8:30, during a short lull, I noticed something strange. The butcher. Stationed before my corner, the room where my friend Gabe usually worked, had a new guy in it. I assumed he was a fill-in. The haunt hired temps sometimes. But when he revved his saw, the sound hit different. Deeper, heavier. Even through the walls, I could tell. A real chain has a growl to it. A prop saw rattles. This one snarled. I peered through a slit in the wall. The guy was taller than Gabe, wearing a similar apron, but his saw had no safety tag. I radioed the floor lead. "Hey, do we have a sub for butcher tonight?" Static. Then negative. "Gabe's on smoke break." "Who's in there?" "No idea," I said. "Saw looks real." "Confirm tag," the lead said. I looked again. No tag. The oil line glistened under the strobe. "Confirmed, none visible," I said. The lead went quiet. Then, "Hold your cue next cycle. We'll pause the line." That meant the haunt would freeze in place for a moment. Actors stop, guests move to safe zones, and we figure out what's wrong without breaking character completely. The next group came through. I stayed still, didn't start my engine. I watched. The new butcher stepped out too far, cornering guests between a foam freezer and a wall. He swung the saw in wide arcs too close for safety. The bar kissed plywood and sparks jumped. Not theatrical sparks, real ones. The sound cut through the fake screams like a gunshot. "Hold code," came the radio. The house lights froze, the music stopped, and the emergency beacon switched on, a white light that meant staff only. I saw him pause, then slowly drag the chain along the foam meat hooks. I felt sick. 2 security guys appeared from a side corridor, armbands glowing in the dim. One yelled, "Drop the saw!" The man didn't move. "Drop it!" He revved once loud enough to shake the wall, then bolted through the staff curtain. I followed just far enough to see him shove through the service door, the one we'd propped open earlier to vent smoke. He sprinted into the parking lot, saw still running. The sound echoed off the cars. Security chased him, but didn't get close. Within a minute, police cruisers arrived. They boxed him in between 2 rows of cars. He finally threw the saw down and raised his hands. I stood just inside the door, shaking, watching through the fog. Guests nearby were clapping, thinking it was part of the show. When it was over, we gathered backstage. Everyone talked over each other. Gabe looked pale. "You called it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. That chain sounded wrong. The floor lead came in with 2 officers. They asked the same questions. Did anyone know him? Did he say anything? Did anyone lend him gear? No one had. The prop manager rolled in a toolbox and held up a tag strip. "Starting tonight," he said, "every prop gets numbered and logged." The officers confirmed what we already suspected. Real saw, full chain, gas in the tank. They'd found a fuel can in his trunk. He wasn't on our payroll or any nearby haunts. When someone asked why, the cop shrugged. Some people just want to see what happens when the line between pretend and real disappears. That answer didn't sit right, but it was all we got. We shut down early. Guests waiting in line got refunds. A few were annoyed. Most were confused. Some thought it had been a stunt. One kid asked if the real Chainsaw Man would be there next time. That hit harder than I expected. Backstage, the crew sat on crates. The manager told us new procedures were coming. Metal detectors for guests, tool checks mid-shift, double ID scans at cast entry. We'd treat every piece of gear like a firearm. I remember rubbing the prop tag on my saw and thinking how flimsy it looked. Just a piece of plastic zip-tied to a handle. But that tag meant trust, and trust had almost been what got us hurt. We reopened the next night, and the crowd was bigger. Word had gotten around, the haunt that got too real. People lined up around the block. I guess that's human nature. Curiosity outweighs fear when it's somebody else's danger. Before we opened the doors, the manager gathered us in the break room. "Last night was real," he said. "Tonight, everything's fake again. Let's keep it that way." The night went smoothly. I hit every cue. The guests screamed, dropped their phones, laughed in relief. Twice, people asked if the chainsaw guy from last night was part of the story now. We smiled and said, "Nope, and that's why you're safe." It became our unofficial motto. Inside the crew, though, everything shifted. We learned the safe word drill like it was gospel. We checked every tool before and after each cycle. The manager added a rule: no one enters in costume without being seen by 2 others. The night it happened, that man must have slipped in between shifts, right after Gabe stepped out. He knew the timing, the layout. Maybe he'd worked haunts before. Maybe he just watched closely. No one saw him arrive, and that's what made it possible. That thought bothered me more than anything, the idea that he could just blend in. 2 weeks later, during cleanup, a family came through near closing time. A mom, dad, and a little kid in a vampire cape. When I did my cue, the dad jumped back and threw his arms wide to protect them, the universal dad move. The kids screamed, then laughed. After they walked out, the mom came back to the edge of my corner. "Was it safe?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah, safer than it's ever been." She smiled. "Good, he loved it." Then she left. I stood there listening to the next group enter. The distant hiss of the fog machine, the rhythm of the lights, everything exactly as it should be, and yet different now. Because once you've seen the real thing slip through the cracks, you can't unsee it. Sometimes I still dream about the sound of that real chain biting plywood, the instant when pretend became something else. I see the sparks, the foam meat hooks swaying, the guests frozen mid-scream because they couldn't tell the difference. It's not trauma in the cinematic sense. It's more like a permanent notch in your awareness. That's the part people don't understand about working in horror. The best scares come from control. The audience has to believe they might die while knowing they won't. Take away that boundary, and it stops being entertainment. It becomes chaos. That night, chaos walked in with a gas can. If you also thought Halloween was harmless fun, until these stories proved otherwise, welcome to the club. Smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me which one messed with your head the most. And if you think October nights are all about pumpkin spice and haunted houses, click now to watch 4 disturbing October horror stories. Because even the sweetest nights can turn sour fast. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.